I'm Helen Bradley. Welcome to this video tutorial. In this tutorial I'm going to show you how to design a hot air balloon landscape image in Illustrator. Before we get started with this project, let's look and see what it is that we're trying to achieve. This is the illustration that we're going to create in Illustrator. We're going to start by creating the balloon and then we're going to create the background. So now that you know what it is that we're aiming for, let's get started. For the balloon, I've created an image which is 1000 by 1000 points, and it's an RGB image. We're going to start with the rectangle tool. I'm just going to drag a long narrow rectangle, and right now it's filled with orange. I need to make 23 more of these, so I'm going to choose Effect, Distort and Transform, Transform. I'm going to type 23 in here, turn on the preview, and then just start increasing the horizontal value by just pressing the up arrow key until I can see all 23 objects. Now that's a bit too big a spacing, so having seen the white spacing between these, I'm now going to decrease it, and I'm looking to get rid of every single one of these sort of very faint white lines, and only when they've all gone can I call that good. I can't have any white lines at all, because if I do, it's going to mess up my balloon later on. I'll click OK. Now we'll do Object Expand Appearance and Object Ungroup. And what that does is it now gives us 24 individual rectangles, and I would go ahead now and start recoloring these. And these are going to be the colors of the gores that we're going to apply to the balloon later on. Now you can recolor these however you like, and you'll recolor all 24 of them. Later on, only 12 are going to be used. They're just going to be on the front side of the balloon. The rest are going to be mapped to the back side of the balloon. But you should fill all of these in just in case you want a three-dimensional balloon later on. So just go ahead and do that now. Once you've done that, select all the 23 or 24 filled shapes and drag and drop them into the Symbols panel and just click OK. And you're going to use this symbol later on to color your balloon. I'm just going to press to delete this set of rectangles. Now you don't have to use 24. If you use, for example, 12, they're going to be mapped all the way around the 3D object, so the gores are actually just going to be wider. So you can choose any number of panels for your, or gores for your balloon, but you probably want something like 8 or more at least. I'm just going to trash this symbol because I don't actually need it. I'm going to use the one that I have pre-prepared before I started this video. So now for the balloon, we're going to select the ellipse tool and drag out a circle. It's filled with green right now. I'm going to fill it with a grey color. A grey color will help me with my shading later on. So you want a grey, a blue grey, a pink grey, or something like that. With the direct selection tool, I'm clicking on this anchor point and press delete. And now this anchor point, I'm going to move out of the vertical line that it's in and down a little bit, just to give it a slightly more balloon shape. And I'm going to Alt drag on this handle just to make the bottom of my balloon. Now I want to make this back into a shape that has a path all around it, so I'm going to click on the pen tool. I'm going to click on this anchor point here, and I'm going to click immediately under this top anchor and then click on that top anchor, and that's just closed the path. And now we have a shape that we can use for our balloon. So to make the balloon, I'm going to click on my shape and let's choose Effect, 3D, Revolve. And we're going to turn the preview on so we can see what we're doing, and you'll notice that there's a more options and a fewer options, so you want to open up this more options panel. And don't be worried by what you see, because it doesn't look like a balloon, but it will very, very soon. And the reason why it looks like this and not like a balloon is this offset value here. We want to offset from the right edge, not the left edge. And there's our balloon shape. Now I'm going to concentrate on the shading here. I don't want plastic shading, I want diffuse or diffuse shading, and I want to bring down my ambient light because I want quite a distinction between the light and the dark areas here. And I'm going to make my blend steps instead of 25, which is the default, I'm going to use 6. So I now have 6 shaded areas over my balloon shape. Now let's go and map our colors to this. It's important that you do this first so you can actually see it, otherwise as soon as you map your art over the top it's going to be less easy to see. Click Map Art. From the symbol drop down list we're going for the symbol that we just created. I'm going to scale it to fit. Now our art is mapped to our shape, and I'll click OK. Before I leave this dialog, I'm a little concerned about this. I don't want to see the top of the balloon. I want to look at the balloon face on. So I'm going to choose front. That just changes my view of the balloon. Now, I'm not convinced that if I had to have these edges that I would want them to actually look like that. So let's take this rotation option here and let's just rotate this shape to see if I can get rid of one of those edges. Well, they're not going to go, so I'm a bit stuck with colors on either side. I'll just call that good for now, and let's click OK. Now I'm going to choose Object, Expand Appearance, and that's now created an expanded version of my balloon object. Let's go to the Layers panel and just do a little bit of cleaning up, because right now it is a bit of a mess. What we end up with here in the Layers panel is effectively 2 versions of the balloon. This is one version and this is the second version, and we only need one, so I'm just going to drag this and drop it on the trash can to get rid of it. I also don't need this clip group, so I'm going to remove it as well. I'm just going to take these 3 layers and move them up to the top. 1, I'm going to take this one, 2, and clipping path 3. And that's got rid of all those nested groups, and all we have now is our mapped colors and our group that holds the shading. Now I want to bring my shading up to the top, so I'm going to drag it above the shape, and I want to start working on its transparency and have it actually do some work, because right now it's having no effect on this object at all. I'm going to open up this group and I'm going to have a look. This is the topmost shading shape. I want it, but I don't want the second one, so I'm going to trash the second one. I want this one, this third one, but I don't want the fourth, so I'm going to trash it. I want this one, but I don't want the last. So I've just narrowed this down, so now I have 3 shading panels instead of 6. I'm going to click on the topmost one to target it, and now we're going to work at making these transparent, and so that they're actually adding some highlights to our balloon. Right now they're anything but highlights, they're just bands of solid color. Choose Window and Appearance, because this gives me access to the Appearance panel of this top shape selected. So I'm going to the Fill option because I want to work with its fill. I'm going to click Opacity and I'm going to make it Blend Mode Screen. That means it's going to be lightening the object underneath later on. I'm just going to adjust its opacity down to something like 30%. It's pretty arbitrary, you can just choose whatever you like. Now let's go and do this to the second path. Again, I want to go to the fill. I want to change the blend mode to screen and the opacity something like 30. I'm going to do it to the last one as well. Opacity, blend mode, screen, lightening blend mode, and then the opacity to around 30%. Very arbitrary. Now you can see that the effect that this has had is that we've got some see-through to the image below, but we're not actually getting the result that perhaps we might have thought that we were going to get. Now the way we achieve that is, having changed how these layers look, is now we're going to the entire group. So I'm going to target the entire group of layers. Now in the Appearance panel, I'm going to change the properties of the entire group, not just these 3 objects in it. So again we're going to Opacity, and again we're going to choose Screen, and this now has the desired lightening effect, and we can adjust down the opacity if we want to. I'm taking it down to 86, but just check and see what it gives you and what you like. And now let's click outside the balloon, and you can see that now we have this highlighting effect showing on the balloon. The next thing that we're going to work on is the color layer. Let's go and see what we're seeing here. Each one of these paths is one of the gores on the balloon. So I'm going to target first of all one of these, and I've just chosen the yellow one. And then I'm going to select all of the other yellow gores. Select, same, fill color. And now I have selected all the yellow gores, and there are 2 of them in this image. And now in the appearance panel, I'm again going to locate the fill option, and I'm going to darken the edges of these gores. So with the fill selected, I'm going to choose Effect, Stylize, and I'm going to choose Inner Glow. Now I want to preview what I'm seeing here, and I want to go and pick up the exact yellow that we were using, which is this one here. And instead of Screen, which is a lightening blend mode, I'm going to choose Multiply, because that's a darkening blend mode. I'm going to make sure that my effect is applied to the edges. I'm just going to increase the opacity value, making these edges more opaque and less see-through, and perhaps just increase also the blur amount. Now I'll click OK. And now I'll go and select the next color, and that's this maroon. And again, select, same, fill color. And now we have selected all the maroon elements. Again, in the fill here, I'm going to choose Effect, Stylize, Inner Glow. Instead of the yellow, I'm just going to go and locate the maroon color. Click OK, preview it. We're seeing a darkening of these edges. Click OK. Move back to this color. This is the green. Select, same, fill color. This selection routine just allows me to select all the same objects, the objects that are colored with the same color, because it allows me then to add this effect to all of them in one hit, rather than having to do it with every gore individually. I'm just doing it all at the one time. And so this is the orange object. Select, same, fill color. These are all the orange objects. Making sure I have my fill selected there, Effect, Stylize, Inner Glow. Just go and pick up my orange color. Not having to make any other changes to these settings, because the settings are just being carried forward from one to the next. So now we've given our balloon a whole lot more dimension and shine, and we've really taken it from something that was quite flat and made it something that is a lot more dimensional. The next step is to add the embellishments to the balloon, and we're going to do that first of all by targeting the color that we want to use, which is that sort of maroon color. I'm going to use that as a stroke, and I'm going to grab the pen tool and draw in the lines that are going to attach the basket to the balloon. So I'm going to click here where it says intersect, so that my line is along the edge of the balloon, and then just drag it down here. I'm going to increase the stroke width to about 3 points. And now you can see that it's not quite in the right place. It's just not looking quite where I want it to be. So I'm going to click on this anchor, and holding the Alt or Option key, just move this handle out. Now that's looking pretty good. I want to reflect this, so I want to duplicate it and reflect it over here. So I'll choose Object, Transform, Reflect. I want to reflect it vertically. Let's preview. You can see it's going to be reflected this way. And now I'm going to click Copy, so that I make a duplicate of it. So now I have 2 of these ropes, and I'm going to just move one of them across so that it's on the other side of the balloon. Now I want a few of these ropes, so I'm going to use the Blend tool to do that. I'll click on the Blend tool, click on the first rope, and click on the second rope. And Illustrator's giving me just one more. need to alter that, so I'm going to double click on the blend tool, choose specified steps, click on preview, and I'm just going to increase the specified steps and until I get the result that I want. So I'm looking to see exactly how many I want, and I think that 4 is just going to be fine, so I'm going to call that good and click OK. And now I'm just going to expand this with Object, Expand. Next we're going to create the loops that are going to join these ropes. So I'm going to start by zooming in here so I can see things a little more clearly. I'm going to grab the ellipse tool and drag out a circle. And I'm just going to drag it down into position. I want the anchors to be over the very top of these ropes. And if I'm resizing it, I'm going to make sure I hold the Shift key so that I'm resizing it in proportion so it's still a circle. Now with the direct selection tool selected, I'm going to click on this topmost anchor and press delete, and that gives me the first of my loops. Control 0 to go back to the main image, and now with this loop selected I'm going to add some more loops. I'm going to add 1, 2, 3, 4 more loops. I'm going to do that with Effect, Distort and Transform, Transform. Set preview on, click 4 because I want 4 copies. I'm going to start moving this horizontal value out until these appear exactly in position at 127 points, and I'll click OK. And now I'll choose Object, Expand Appearance. Now we're ready to put the detailing on these loops, and we're going to do that with a brush, so we're going to create our own brush. Again, I'm holding the Shift key down as I use the ellipse tool to draw a circle. Let's zoom into this general area. With the direct selection tool, I'm going to click on the topmost node because I want to delete it. And now with the pen tool, I'm just going to join these two anchors together so I have this sort of closed shape. Now with this shape selected, I'm going to extend it a little ways just to get my pattern. Effect, Distort and Transform, Transform. Turn preview on. I probably want about 8 copies should be sufficient. And now I'm just going to increase the horizontal value here until I get a pattern that I like. So I want to use a pattern something like this, so I'll click OK. And then Object, Expand Appearance. So I'm going to select it, and then I'm going to open my brushes panel, which is here, and drag and drop it into my brushes panel. I'm going to make it a pattern brush. And now it's a pattern brush. I'll click OK. Let's get rid of this because I no longer need it. Control 0 to go back to my balloon. Now I'm going to my layers palette because I want to see what's going on here. This is the balloon, this is the shading, this is the anchor ropes, and this is the detailing. It's in here. So let's go and have a look at it. Now I'm going to select all of these paths by clicking on the first and shift clicking on each of the others so that they're all selected. And now I'm going to add my brush stroke to them by just clicking on the brush. Now it's sort of got a few problems here. One, the looping is pointing upwards and it's a little bit wide. So I'm going to double click my brush and make some changes to it. First of all, I'm going to bring down the size of my brush so I get more loops, and then I'm going to flip it across the path so it's underneath instead of on top, and I'll click OK. Illustrator is telling me that I'm about to change existing strokes, and I'm really happy to do that. That's what I wanted to do, so I'll click Apply to Strokes. Now I have my loops in place. Let's just zoom in and see what's going on in here. You can see that I've got a little bit of untidiness happening at the very top of each of these ropes. So what I'm going to do is create a mini object that I can use to cover it up. Again, I'm in here with the circle tool, the ellipse, and I'm going to add 3 of these shapes. I'm going to select all of them. I'm just going to invert this so that they're filled shapes with no stroke. And now I'm going to move them into position so they form a sort of clover. And then I'm going to give it a bit of a stalk. I'm going to give it a red stroke, increase the point size a little bit, and let's apply one of these brush profiles to it. This one's a good one. I'll press the letter V, rotate the shape through 180 degrees and just put it into position here. So this is the little object that I'm going to use on the top of each of these ropes. So I'm going to select it, and I'm just going to use the Pathfinder with Window Pathfinder, and I want to create a single object, but before I do I'm going to have to expand this stroke here. So I'll click on it and choose Object Expand Appearance. So now it's a shape like the others. I'm just going to click on the Unite to create the shape that I'm going to use. Drag and drop it into position here, and then I can copy it all the way across the shape. Now I could do that manually, or I could go ahead and use my transformation. Effect, Distort and Transform, Transform. 127 points did it last time, so I'm thinking that that's going to work again this time, but I'm going to need 5 copies. I'm thinking that's pretty good, so well, maybe 126.5. Now you might think that these sliders have to be set below 100. That's not true. You can put whatever value you like in here, and you can also use half, and you can actually use 126.1 if you want to position it correctly. So I'll click OK. And again, with this object selected, Object Expand Appearance. Okay, now I'm going to grab these and I'm going to put them all in this group. So I'm just going to grab them so that they're all nicely together, because I don't really need multiple groups for these anymore. So let's just get rid of that. So this is giving me all my rope elements. I've got a blend here of these rope elements and my shading and my colors. Now we're ready to go ahead and make the balloon basket, but right now my balloon is probably a little bit on the big side, so let's make it a bit smaller. Object Transform Scale. Going to make it about 85% of its existing size, and I'll just click OK. Now it's a bit smaller, and I can move it up the screen a little bit. Now we can create the balloon basket, which we're going to do with the rectangle tool. So I'm just going to drag out a rectangle here. Now I actually wanted it to be filled with brown, so let's just bring the color to the fore and we'll add a brown color to it. Let's go to the Appearance panel because it wants to be a wicker basket, so we're going to need a second fill. I'm going to click Add New Fill, and this is going to be my brown layer, and this is going to be here the fill that I'm going to put the basket weave in. So I've turned off my top fill so I can see what's going on, and let's just click this drop down here and go and add my new pattern swatch. Now I got this from the internet, and I'll give you a link to find that yourselves. Now this is too big, so again with this fill layer selected, I'm going to shrink down the pattern. Effect, Distort and Transform, Transform. Now here I don't want to transform the object, it's a fine size. What I do want to do is scale the strokes, effects and patterns. So I'm going to bring it down to say around 50% of its original size, and you can see that's only affected the fill here, the pattern fill. Now let's go and turn our brown back on, because I want to fill this brown layer actually with a gradient and then add a blend mode to it so that I can see the fill behind it. So let's go and get the gradient tool here, and let's actually apply the gradient fill. And what I want to do here is to go and get my brown color from my swatch. I'm going to here to add another brown color, and then I want to add another stop here, so I'm going to hold the Alt key as I drag this stop away and create a third stop here. Double click it, and I'm going to use a sort of orange color for it. Now this is too big of a gradient for me. I want it to be just like highlighted on the very edge, so I'm bringing in these markers that mark where the gradient is at 50%. So this is yellow. At 50% it's halfway now between yellow and brown, and by moving it closer to the yellow I'm going to get a very steep transition here, which is exactly what I want. So let's just close this panel, and right now we've got our brown gradient and our basket weave, and we want to mix the two. So I'm going to target my brown gradient, open up the panel here, go to opacity and set the blend mode to multiply, and all that does is just multiply blends this layer with the one below, so you're getting a general darkening effect, but the gradient is also giving us a bit of dimension here. So let's just click away from here. I think I would like my basket to be a little bit more of an interesting shape. When I target it though, you'll see that right now we're working only on the top fill. We want to make the entire basket a different shape. So I'm going to target the path in the appearance panel, and that's going to affect everything to do with this basket. Effect, warp, bulge. Now I'm going to choose a horizontal bulge. I'm going to add a bit of a bend to it, not that much though, and I'm going to add a little bit of vertical distortion, but that's all. We're previewing it so that we've got a rounded top, slightly flared out edges, and a rounded bottom, and I'll click OK. And that's a much more interesting basket, but right now the ropes aren't quite working for me, so I'm just going to choose Object, Expand Appearance, and I think now I can just enlarge the basket just a little bit. Normally I would use a transformation scale to do that, but I'm not losing a lot in terms of the scale of this object by doing so. Let's just zoom in here, and just going to grab this and just move it into position. Now because this is still part of a blend, it's just having an effect on all the blend objects, the bottom edge of the blend objects. Control 0, just check that that hasn't affected anything else. Now what I want to do next is to just add a bottom edge to the balloon, so I'm just going to click on probably the blend group and add it to that. I'm going to make sure that my fill color is this sort of red color, and I'm going to choose a rounded rectangle. I'm just going to add it in here, and I can zoom in to make sure that it's in the right place. And click away from it. Now I am a little concerned of its positioning right now in the layers palette, because I want it to be behind the blend. The problem would be is if I changed the rope color, then the rope would appear otherwise behind the bottom edge of the balloon, and it's just going to look plain wrong. So rearranging these in the layers palette ensures that the color of the ropes are going to appear over the top of this object rather than behind it. So let's press Control 0, and here's my finished balloon. So I can now go ahead and create the background for the image. And what's important right now is that we start working with some new layers. So I'm going to add a new layer to the object, and I'm going to also just lock this balloon down, so any changes we make now are not going to affect this balloon layer. I want a rectangle the size of the artboard, and I could go ahead and just drag out a rectangle, but I have a script that does that. So I'm just going to run my script, and you can look out for my video on scripting in Illustrator if you want to learn a bit more about scripts, or you can just hand draw your rectangle. I have my background selected. This is going to be my background. Now what I want to do is to fill it with a gradient. So I already have a gradient prepared here that I'm going to use, so I'm just going to click on it, and let's go and see what this gradient looks like. it's a gradient from a sort of yellowy green, if you like, to a sort of light blue. And at one end it's 100% opaque, and at this end it's partially transparent. Well, it's actually down to an opacity of only 30%. So it's also a radial gradient, so it's giving us something a little bit interesting in the background, more interesting than a solid color would be. Now I can also just move this a little out of the center so that the lightest edge here is actually where the lighter edge of my balloon is going to be. So let's just click away from this. This background now is at the top of the image. That's why it's showing over the top of the balloon. Let's just move it below the balloon layer. And now we're going to add some clouds. So with this layer targeted, I'm going to turn the lock on the background so I don't get in the way of that. I'm going to start drawing some circles, and I can draw those anywhere, so I'm just going to start drawing them out here. And I want 3 or 4 of them of different sizes. So let's just go and grab all of these shapes and let's create a new gradient for them. We'll go and grab this gradient and start working on it. I want this to be a little bit more white and blue rather than blue and yellow. So I'm just going to click here and let's make this the white edge. And we're going to keep the blue that we have, but for the white I'm just going to increase the opacity to maybe around 70%. So we have a gradient that's sort of white on the inside and blue on the outside. So now let's position the circles into something of a sort of cloud shape. And now we're going to add a base to it. So let's just go and grab a rounded rectangle and just add that to the shape. I'm going to make it into a single shape using the shape builder tool. So first of all I'm going to select over all of these objects here, then go and get the shape builder tool, which shares a position with the live paint tools. But the shape builder that I want, I'm going to start joining up the shapes that I want to be all one shape, and as I do, the gradient is actually going to be reapplied to the shape rather than to the individual objects. Now this is the bit I don't want, so I'm going to press Alt as I drag into that to remove it. Press the letter V to go back to the selection tool. I want to work a little bit more on this gradient. I think I need it to be a little bit wider. And having done that, let's go and drop the cloud into the sky and see how it's working. Well, I'm still not happy with that. I think this is probably too opaque. Maybe even go for a linear gradient. That might give me a bit more of the effect I'm looking for. Having done that, I'm just going to duplicate this, hold the Alt key as I drag the clouds away, and I'm going to create a few of these clouds. And then do the same down here. A few clouds behind the balloon as well, and maybe one up here. You can always reverse this one too, just to get a slightly different effect. But for this one, I'll probably want to reverse its gradient. So now we've got our clouds, and they're going to be here. I'm just going to lock those down as well, so any changes we make right now are not going to affect the clouds either. But I want to unlock this background layer because I just want to drag it onto the new layer icon so I can get 2 copies of it. I'm going to lock the bottom one, I'm going to target this one and just drag it down. So I'm going to use this for the hills, and it's just easier to do without having to drag out another shape since it's already been created for me. Now let's go and add or fix the gradient that's applied here. I'm going to click on this. I want it to be a linear gradient, and I'm thinking a dark green to a lighter green, so let's just turn this to 90 degrees. And now we've got this color here at the top, so let's go and make this a green color. and if it's too much of a green, we can always just adjust down its opacity. And then at the bottom we're going to add another color. So again, let's add perhaps a lighter green still. And again, this time we might set its opacity to, well, not to 100, maybe 80. We can also adjust this so that instead of it being just solid color, we can blend it into the layer underneath. Go and get this fill layer and change its opacity and perhaps set it to multiply or to another one of these blend modes, any one of which is going to give us a different look to our illustration. So you can work out which of these blend modes is going to work best for you, and you can also adjust the opacity. For now, I'm just going to call that good because I don't want to waste too much more time on it. Now I'm going to go to the pen tool and click the Add Anchor Point tool. I'm just going to click and add some anchor points here that I can use to create mountains. So I have these created. Now I'm going to go to the Direct Selection tool and start creating just a few mountains here. Now if I click on the anchor tool, click on each of these anchors and click this option here, I can just round off these shapes without having to really do much work. If I want to make them look a little bit different, I can, but this is just going to give me some rolling hills. Again, I think I work a bit at darkening this, but for now let's just lock that layer, and we can go and add some trees. Now I already had some trees created in my swatches or my symbols panel here, and I'm just going to drag out a tree here, break the connection so we can just have a look at it. This tree has just been created in Illustrator from a range of shapes. All I did was use the stroke tool to drag out this stroke shape, expand it, and then create the background for the tree, or the tree elements. And I had saved it as a symbol. I find it handy to create objects like this that I can use over and over again. So that's basically the tree shape that we're going to use. Going to drag a new symbol out of there at the right size, break the link, and just make it a little bit bigger. And now, holding down the Alt or Option key, I can drag trees into my landscape. I could resize these if I want to for appearing further away or closer to the viewer. I'm thinking just to finish off, I'll lock this entire background layer. Let's unlock the balloon layer, let's select it, and let's just rotate it so that the balloon is on an angle and looks a little bit more like it's flying through the air. So at this point I'll be locking everything down and saving my file. Now, one of the other things that I might be wanting to consider right now is what this balloon might look like if it were a different color. So I'm just going to unlock this layer and make a duplicate of it so that we have two balloons. And I'm going to hide this one, lock it and hide it, so that right now we're working on a duplicate of our original piece of art. In the swatches panel, I'm going to go here and create a new color group, and just click OK. I'm grabbing it from the selected artwork. And with the object still selected, I'm going into the recolor option. So I'm just going to click on that. And Illustrator has set up all the colors that I have in my artwork. So I'm just going to click Edit. And here are the colors, and I can remap them, so I can just drag around to alter the colors in this artwork. And I can experiment to see if I could get perhaps a more interesting balloon, or a balloon that has some sort of different colors in it that might be more of what I want to be using. So the mere fact that I've chosen colors in the original doesn't mean I have to actually stick with them. If If I drag everything closer to the middle, you'll find I get a more pastel sort of balloon. I can also unlink these colors. If I like everything except a particular color, I can unlink these colors, and this green is what I'm targeting right now. Is I can take it somewhere else in the colors, so I can do something different with it. And now if I like that, I'm just going to click OK, and yes, save the swatches to a new color group. And we've now got a new color group for this particular balloon. We've still got the original balloon because we saved a copy of it on its own layer. Let's take this one and let's resize it. Object, transform, scale. Let's make it, say, about 45% of its original size. Click OK, and we'll move it further out. And then let's go back and bring in our original. Of course, we're going to need to rearrange the layers so that the smaller balloon is behind the larger balloon. Thinking also I just might change its rotation a little bit. So there you have the possibilities of creating original art in Illustrator. The balloon is one thing you've learned. You've seen how to use the 3D tools. You've also seen how to create a brush and a sort of landscape look to an image. I'm Helen Bradley. Thank you for joining me for this video tutorial. Look out for more of my tutorials here on my YouTube channel, and consider subscribing to my channel and you'll be alerted when new videos are released. And visit my website at projectwoman.com, where you'll find more tips, tricks and tutorials on a range of applications including Photoshop, Lightroom, Illustrator and a whole lot more.